Hello, welcome to the channel. This is the Self-Proclaimed Blue Dragon. This is an art channel where I discuss some of my own projects that I am a part of, comics, webcomics from the indie art world, and a variety of different things that are art related. And this week I'm going to be talking a bit about my free Not Safe for Work webcomic Dark Horse. All the links are down in the description for that comic. I have currently been working on what's called a revamp or a redraw of my older pages, since this is a project that I started way back in 2008. And the art, while I'm not like a fantastic artist, I'll be the first to admit that I definitely have weak points and places that I need to strive to improve, and of course am doing so. However, the old pages were just unacceptable if I ever wanted to try to, kind of print or make a career of this, which is what I'm kind of doing. I want it to be like, I'm kind of guiding the controls. I don't care if I blow up on YouTube or anything like that. This is just kind of my trip, working on this project, on this webcomic, and I like to share it with other people because I hope that it inspires anyone out there who wants to create art to do so. I think it's great that, we can connect with each other and kind of inspire each other to do things like that. So what I'm going to be doing in this video today is talking about the finale of Battle Royal, which is the revamp page, bringing it back to what I was talking about. And I'm going to go into a little bit of discussion about, what my ideas were for this page, a little bit of, how I came up with the composition, and a little bit about, what my goals were and what I kind of did throughout the video, because sometimes it's not always necessarily evident what I'm doing in Photoshop. This is Photoshop CS5. This is an old version. I do not use the new version. I will not pay for a subscription for what you used to get at a flat price, albeit an expensive flat price, but it wasn't something that you had to pay for annually, which, I'm sorry, I'd rather just buy the software and be done with it. So that's what we're going to be doing in this week's video. I'll try not to have this too long and rambly. I'm going to show what the old page looked like and show the two pages side by side for a comparison, so you can see that there has been growth in my art, even though I'm still improving. I'm also going to show you what the finished piece looks like, because by the time this video comes out, it will have already been posted on Webtoons. My patrons and Subscribestar member, they get these pages early access. They got this back in May, as soon as I got it done. While we're on the subject of patrons and Subscribestar peoples, I want to just take this moment to thank my supporters from the bottom of my heart. Seriously, just having somebody out there helping and supporting and showing that they appreciate the art, it means a lot to me. So I just wanted to stop and say thank you to those people. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. You are super freaking awesome. So thank you. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this image. This is something that was very difficult for me to kind of conceptualize, especially back when I was first working on this act. I had very lofty ambitions. I had a definite idea of what I wanted to portray, because in this scene we're addressing that Odysseus, he's got a curse on him, right? Which is why he's in the dragon form, but he's actually having an extreme emotional surge, a surge of emotion, which when it comes to what's going on in the story, that's extremely important. The characters who are capable of accessing magic, depending on the type of magic that they're doing, they're doing something specifically, and it is reactionary to their emotion and their being. So I had this idea that I was trying to portray in the original version of Dark Horse, and I really just could not get the page down right. I was trying to demonstrate that Odysseus is, because of this surge of power which is tied into one's emotions, he's in some ways breaking this curse. as the story goes along, we'll find out more about the specific curse and stuff like that. But in the original page, which I'll show you here, I didn't really know, and you could probably still argue that I still don't know, but I didn't really know how to convey that he is transforming from this dragon form into, back into his human form, which is his natural form. And it just is, I wasn't very good at drawing thorns. I don't even, just look at this, y'all. This is awful. And this is just from 2019. This is only from about 3 years ago, approximately, I don't know exactly what month I drew this in, but I just was struggling so much on how to do this. And, I did do my own word art. This was reading from right to left at the time still, too. It was right after this act that I decided I was going to just have everything read in my native language, which is, from left to right. But yeah, I was just struggling so bad. I knew the color combinations I wanted. I will say I had the color combo down because I wanted to make sure that I was using, I think this is a split complementary color palette. I wanted green to be the primary color because, as we will be learning more about Yuli's powers, that clearly you can tell by the thorns that his powers are derived from plants, organic materials, flora, things of that nature. So I really wasn't sure how to really conceptualize this. And when I came to this page, this year, 2022, I've been really trying to focus a lot on composition. And there are times when I definitely fail, especially since I've been traveling so much. It's not really much of an excuse, but I admit there are a lot of sloppy pages in Battle Royale. And there are a lot of pages that I am super proud of and very happy that I had taken the time to plan it out and do some heavy inking techniques. So it's a little maybe 60-40, how much I'm happy with the chapter, and 40% that I really need to go back and rework those when it comes time to edit. But anyway, at any rate, I really didn't want to mess up this final page because it is such an important moment for Odysseus, who up into this point, he's kind of not really, he's clearly not a fighter, and he kind of gets pushed around a lot. And what I wanted to really emphasize in this act was that he is extremely intimidated by Keisuma, and we will learn why in later chapters. But at the same time, seeing what has happened to someone that he considers a friend, even though, this is Rina back in the past, not in the present, which is where he comes from, the present day. But still, he's having this internal battle with himself about wanting to stand up to Keisuma, but not necessarily being a good enough fighter to take her on, but still being enraged enough that, he has this emotional surge, which is what is in part breaking this curse that's on him. So I really wanted to do this scene honor, which I mean, look at this, it's not doing the scene honor at all. So I years ago had started a thread on Comic Fury that I track. I keep it bookmarked. I think I kept it bookmarked. But it was some questions to the community on some suggestions for how can I improve my comic book page composition. And I got a lot of fantastic feedback from people, very detailed feedback. And one of the members of the community had suggested a website to me where the comic artist is going into detail about the golden ratio, and has this extremely complex diagram that they use for how they set up their comic pages and paneling. I'll leave the link to that blog in the description, because if you're a comic book artist, I think it's really freaking useful. and it's something that, you know, I think should be shared around. It's very complex, and I'm not going to pretend like I fully understand the complexity of this golden ratio diagram that this person has created, but I did use that as a template for where I wanted to place things, because I wanted to make sure that there was chaos, but I wanted the chaos to be a bit organized. And so I'm specifically speaking about like the thorns. I knew that I wanted the thorns to be like circular. I wanted it to be kind of like things were rotating, almost, not quite, but maybe just to be evocative of the visual of saw blades. Or similar to like barbed wire when it's coiled up. You know, I grew up in the country, so I've seen like barbed wire that's coiled, and I've seen it that's stretched out. And you know what? Y'all know what barbed wire looks like. That was kind of, I think, subconsciously the idea, because I wasn't thinking of barbed wire at the time, but it makes sense as I'm looking at it, and that's kind of what's come to mind. And I'm really glad that I was able to kind of get that visual put down. So the way I did this was I printed off this golden ratio and I put it down on my light box, and I sketched my thorns over it, and I sketched the flowers and the petals and the leaves, and I tried to make sure that everything fell on an intersection of that diagram, because as I viewed it, those were kind of points of interest. But I still wanted to make sure that, you know, I had like the swoop, the diagonal. I knew where I was going to be placing the character, where, you know, Odysseus as both his dragon and human form. I knew where they would be. I think that I could probably do some changes to this, you know, to make it more clear that he's transforming. Maybe like do some ghosting with the dragon form kind of up towards the human figure. But my main concern, because I'm getting more comfortable with drawing figures and forms. Clearly I was not comfortable drawing male nudes, but this time I didn't shy away. I actually used a couple references, which I'll drop those down in the description too. They are drawings instead of like live humans, which you probably should use human references, not, you know, other people's drawings, because you'd be picking up their mistakes. But, you know, I mean, let me put it this way, it was difficult to remove the filter and not just come up with straight up male porn. And like, the goal for me was not to draw an erect penis, because there's nothing in this scene that is sexual or should be considered as sexualized. So I ended up like, it's hard sometimes to filter for that, because all you get is porn, and it's like, I don't want porn. I just want the male nude so I can study it. So I did end up referencing some drawings by artists that are far superior in skill to mine, but I will put those links down in the description, and hopefully YouTube or BitChute won't, like, you know, get too mad at me for sharing those. It's not porn, it's just the naked form. But I was really trying to be more comfortable and making sure that I'm learning to draw the male form as well. I've drawn Yuli naked a few times just because, you know, it's slight, not, I mean, a little bit of comedy, just because, you know, for some reason people, we laugh at nudity for some reason sometimes. But, you know, this is not a funny scene. This isn't like back when Shimiko took them out of, you know, the Earth's hemisphere, out of the moon's cycle, and so he transformed out of his dragon form into his human form because they were in an interdimensional pocket. This is not the same thing as that, where that was kind of being played off for comedic relief. This is just because, naturally speaking, if he's transforming from a naked dragon into a human, he's not gonna have clothes. Okay. But at any rate, I knew where I wanted the figures to be, but the background, I knew that was going to be my biggest challenge, because I know a lot of my own weaknesses. I know that is one of my weak spots, serious face. So I used that golden ratio template, but I wanted it to be a little bit chaotic, like an organized chaos. I knew I wanted some thorns to be in the foreground, so I inked them a little bit separately. Like, I inked the more detailed background, and then I, on a separate page, inked what would be the foreground. And as you're seeing in the background, it's sped up, of course, because this took like an hour and a half to play around with. It actually took longer. I didn't record doing all the line work, cleanup, and all that. But I really wanted to have like kind of an organized chaos in the background. And so what I ended up doing was I made sure that, because whenever you do like a base relief in Photoshop, it'll use whatever your two colors are that you have on your palette that are selected as like the foreground and background. So I picked my complementary colors, the purple and the blue, and I used that as kind of like the base background, primarily being purple, and then I wanted the very pastel green, because I wanted that to be kind of pushed into the background, whereas everything else is going to be in the foreground. So like the thorns closest to us, I used the darkest color. If you look off into the distance, if you're outside and you've got like a good view of distance, that whole atmospheric perspective, things kind of start to get lighter as they get further away, and they're darker the closer they are. Now, of course, lighting has, something to play into this also, but just generally speaking, that is the case. So that's kind of why I had the background, besides just wanting that to be in the background and not standing out nearly as much as the stuff in the foreground. And then like I had like a medium kind of bright green for the vines and stuff that were going to be in between Odysseus and the base reliefed background. And then kind of last minute, I was like, well, how am I going to make this look really frickin' chaotic? I want there to be movement and motion in this. And then I thought, oh, well, let's take a look at like the blur filters. I love myself some blur filters, y'all. Oh, I shouldn't, but I do. But yeah, and then I thought, well, okay, well, if I could just have this blurred in a specific direction, then it would really give motion, like these thorns are coming up. These vines and thorns are just coming out and moving very quickly. And that's kind of how I ended the image. I played around a lot with like the hues and stuff. Like I started out with normal colors. I want to say I'm probably getting a little bit too much influence from JoJo's, even if it's subconsciously. Like I wasn't intending to like have them just be purple for the sake of being purple, but I really wanted the colors to be, to blend very well. I wanted them to complement each other, and I do kind of get a little wild and crazy with my colors sometimes, which was why I was very reserved with the red. I think that's a split complementary. If it's not, I'll put like a link to like some color theory stuff down in the description too. I'm gonna write all these notes down, relying on future editor editor Blue to do all the work, as I'm just like, yeah, I'm just gonna link everything, and then editor Blue is like, oh, I hate myself. Kidding. But yeah, I'll have something down in the description for anyone who's interested in just, learning the basics of color theory and stuff like that. I don't proclaim to have mastered anything, but I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to be a little better with my colors. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on in this image. I was very reserved with the red, but I did want the rose petals in there. So there's a lot of symbolism with everyone's powers and stuff. But particularly with Odysseus just because of his background. I have Foxglove kind of floating around here and there. Foxglove is very important to him because back in Act 3, we learned that, they just arrived in Oregon when his mother gets murdered. And, some kind of mysterious beings bury his mom for him. And, they put foxgloves on her grave. So it's kind of like a bittersweet moment for him. There was like someone had shown him some kindness. He doesn't know exactly who, but that flower is very important to him. But at the same time, whereas he is more of a, he's not much of a fighter. He doesn't particularly like to fight. But at the same time, if you get someone angry enough, when push comes to shove, they will sometimes fight back. And that's kind of the case here with him. That's where the thorns and the roses come in. Because he is more of a lover than a fighter. So, but roses have thorns, and, every rose has a thorn, blah, 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 whatever. I'm sorry. But the other thing, though, about foxglove is that it is extremely poisonous. So it looks very beautiful. It looks very harmless, but it's actually a very, very poisonous plant. And so I think it was kind of, for me, there's a lot of meaning behind the things that I've chosen here. So yeah, Yuli looks, generally speaking, seems kind of soft, like he sucks at fighting. He's not, he's got a little bit of a build, but really he's not, that's mostly from like having to work and stuff like that. It's not like he's a bodybuilder or anything, but at the same time, he's not like someone to be trifled with. He's just got to find himself. He's got to find his courage and his strength. And that's kind of what this scene is. Because he had tried to stand up to Keisuma, but he's been beaten down just for years, and quite frankly is very frightened of her because she is an abusive character. And so this is just kind of finally him boiling over. I don't want to talk too much about him, but it's more that now he's got someone to defend. He should have been, he wants to defend himself, but now he's got people to fight for besides himself. And there's also, that he's actually connecting with people who can help with the fight. So he's not isolated. He's not alone anymore, so to speak. But we'll get more into that as the story goes along. I'm really happy with how this page turned out. There's still stuff that I could improve upon. Like I said, maybe ghosting the dragon figure and, kind of making it more obvious that he's transforming. But, it's symbolism. Maybe I'll go back and do that. But I'm, for the most part, pretty happy with this page. I hope that you've enjoyed me babbling about this. I just think it's interesting to share like the thought process and to really like push yourself. I was really, I myself was intimidated by this page. I had been like bang, 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 putting out pages, working on my art. But when I got to this page, I was so nervous that like, I even, used my sketchbook to try to sketch out and, figure out how I wanted to do this, because I really didn't want to mess it up. I'd messed it up so bad the first time, I felt, that I was like, no, I've got to really plan this, and I've got to really think outside the box, and I think that paid off, and so that's why I'm happy to share this and kind of maybe babble more than I should about this specific page, but I'm really happy with it. I really like to end a chapter with a tastefully colored page, and I was not happy with the last page of Opposition at all because I didn't do any experimenting with the colors or anything, and it's just kind of blah. I feel like I really need to redo that page, but I'm ending this chapter on a high note because this whole battle is really important because it's going to influence what happens next in the story. But that's all I've got to say this week. Thank you all for watching. I hope that this has inspired you to kind of push yourselves to your boundaries, and even if you come up with something that you're not necessarily happy with, there might be something that you learn from it. So I hope that it inspires you to get out there and work on something and try to portray whatever is in your mind. And I hope that you succeed, and if you do, you know, share like your comics and stuff below, you know, like tell me what your comic is, where it can be found, yada yada. You know, YouTube won't really allow links and stuff in the comments. I don't know about BitChute, but like if you tell me where it can be found, like if it's on like Tapas or something, or if I can Google it, you know, I'll take a look at it and, you know, see what you've been working on. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the week. Peace and love. Fare you well. Keep on trucking.